Boy, I hadn't thought about that.
You know,
Tanya, ready to go?
Yes.
I'm gonna wait till he sits down and make him stand back.
Jenny, I'll say this, if that's true.
Call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Announcements. Next regular meeting is scheduled for Friday, July 10th, 2015 at 9 a.m. at the Community Center, 3500 Edgewater Drive, Sebring, Florida. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on silent. Or texting. Thank you. Allison asked me to remind everyone that the board has directed her to prepare the written meeting notes in summary form. So if you want your comments noted otherwise, please indicate that before speaking by saying something like verbatim, as spoken, or something to that effect. I need a motion to approve a consent agenda, which are the minutes of the regular board supervisors meeting Friday, June 12th, excluding the budget hearing portion.
So moved.
second.
Board comments? Public comment. Back to the board. Call the roll.
Supervisor Hulbert,
Yes.
Supervisor Miller,
Yes.
Supervisor Haubig,
Yes.
Supervisor White,
Yes.
President McCullough.
Yes. Before we get into the next resolution, earlier this week, Tanya and I talked about the purchasing procedures, which is an internal document, and I believe Mr. Haubig requested that we put that on the agenda this morning to make it part of the budget policy. And her and I both feel that there is a lot of wording in that purchase agreement that is open to interpretation one way or the other. So my question to Mr. Haubig here is, do you want to proceed with this, or do you want to give her time to rewrite this, and then we'll bring it back maybe at the August meeting to make it part of the policy?
Well, I think we need to go forward with it, mainly for one one reason is it's a policy that we've been using. It's a policy that we've given the auditors to show we got internal control. Without it, we don't have any internal control. And until such time that we can write a more concise policy, this policy, in my opinion, should apply, because it's been applying. It is supposed to have been applied, and in some cases it has been, in some cases it has not been. So in the interim, until we can get a more concise policy written, I think this policy needs to be discussed and put in effect.
Well, our feeling is that she'd probably bring it back to the board in August, and between now and August, there really isn't any major purchasing being done that we're currently aware of. Maybe you want to speak to that as well. I don't know. But
That's not the point.
I understand the point, but my point is that we put it in policy, and then 2 months later we change it again. So, but if you guys want to go forward, I don't care. I'm just asking, that's all.
And there is need for improvement on the policy, and my plans are in the next few months to do some revisions to this policy and bring it back to the board. But it's at the board's pleasure today whether or not you'd like to adopt it.
Let me ask John a question. My understanding is that a policy is not a policy until it comes before the board and is approved by the board. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Well, then why all this wishy-washiness about this particular document, and they call it an internal document? Is it a policy or not a policy? It has no track record of being approved, and we've been working on this thing for years.
I agree. It's not a policy.
Well, isn't it your position or your job to tell us about things like that?
Is it my job to go through the district and police everything? And-
You've
I
had
don't
the
understand what you're
you've had the
saying.
discussions on the policy before.
You know, if I was in-house counsel, I would agree these are things I should be studying. I'm not. The bottom line is, I do what the district asks me to do. If I did any more, I'd be criticized for doing too much. That's the bottom line. I agree that something needs to be addressed here. You know, if there was an issue or a problem, it's not been brought to my attention until just now. Here's the resolution to give you a temporary fix. I'm happy to work with Ms. Candidate to get an appropriate policy that we think would be completely addressing these matters.
I think that's what we need to do, but in the interim, I think we need to adopt this policy. Somewhere along the line, John, this policy was probably approved by the board, and nobody has either taken the time to look for it, or nobody has taken the time to find it. You don't have something like that written, and the first thing when I asked for a policy, that's what Tanya sent me. This is the policy. This is what we've been giving the auditor. So what's the problem in approving it? It takes 5 minutes to approve it, and then we can adopt the next policy if and when it ever gets written, because it may take a while. You know, with things the way they're going, it may take a while.
Let me address the first comment first. We have not done a thorough search, to my knowledge, but I believe what happened was the auditor asked Mr. Merrill, when he was the district comptroller, for the policies. Mr. Merrill drafted these policies and then provided them to the auditor. Okay? I'm not saying that was right or wrong. I just know the district staff produced these policies and they were drafted by Mr. Merrill. So I'm presuming that's what happened. Because that made the auditor happy, and we satisfied that part of it. As to whether they should be adopted today, frankly, I think I'm all in favor of that, simply because it gives you an interim policy that you now have that you can deal with prior to adoption of your revised permanent policy. So
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody on this board not wanting to adopt this policy in the interim until the new policy is written.
works for me, sir.
Alrighty, we'll go forward. Resolution number 2015-06/26-20, a resolution of the Sun and Lake Sebring Improvement District adopting district purchasing procedures.
Motion to approve.
Second. Tanya, are we operating now under a more or less decentralized purchasing procedure? We don't have any other than yourself, and of course you're new to this game, but have the department heads been the primary movers in terms of purchasing and use of the cards and so forth?
Yes, they have.
And that was, I believe, instituted under Mike Wright?
It's been that way since I've been employed with the district.
Well, years ago, not that long ago, but
Correct.
we had a centralized procedure, and that was, I believe, when Ileana was here.
And department
So-
heads have always had an involvement in the purchasing.
Okay, what are the pros and cons of that in terms of limits and liability and do's and don'ts and so forth? I mean, do they have purchasing power up to the specifications in this policy, or do they have a certain limit that, and then comes to you for review, or how's that working right now?
As far as the purchasing, I mean, the department heads have the knowledge in the field of what they need, whether it's chemicals, whether it's repair work, and they work with the staff to get what the staff needs for day-to-day use, and department heads approve the invoices because they are the ones who have the knowledge, whether the product is received, it's been ordered, they approve it, they code it, and then at that point, we run it through our payable process.
Are there limits involved in this, or
Based on this policy, yes, there is.
based on this?
Yes.
I got in trouble with bringing this up once before, but one of the reasons I wanted this put in effect, and I assumed it was in effect, and when I brought it up, I was told it was not, it's, when I brought up this tree trimming situation, unbeknownst to me, there was another $12,500 on the next month's financial that was just let out without any bids, I don't think, and without any pricing. And I just wanted to make sure we got internal control. Within the last 9 or 10 months, we've spent over $70,000 on tree trimming without any real regulation on it. And things like that are problematic for me, and I think when you're dealing with the public money, you can't let that happen just without having control.
Public comment?
Tom Costi. I've recently made as thorough a study as I could with information that's available publicly on the district website, and I found a statement, a resolution, that renamed the district's purchasing policy, and it referred to a policy that was approved by the board in 1995. That wording is in the resolution that was approved, that renamed the purchasing policy. Has anybody found what that policy was that was approved by the board in 1995?
No, sir.
No?
No.
We probably have half a dozen different law firms that are referring to our policy manual, which, by the way, still says that all purchasing, aside from that comes to the board for approval, all purchasing is done by the purchasing agent. That says so. That's in our district policy manual. At the board meeting in April, I think 24th or 26th of 2013, which is where the kickoff was for the tennis court project. That's when Mr. Wright explained to the board that he was putting the district on a decentralized purchasing program. That's when he gave the keys to the bank to the department heads. They no longer had to submit requisitions that went to a purchasing coordinator who had been, just previous to that time, had been terminated. She was the one that covered the paperwork to set this stuff up, including what accounts these purchases were going to be charged to, and et cetera. Once that was changed by Mr. Wright, the department heads then got the ability to write their own purchase orders, approve the own invoices when they came in, assign their own account numbers to what they were going to be charged to, and approve them for payment. Now, I know that in a report form, they go by you as, at the time, as Director of Finance, and presumably also to the General Manager. But decentralized purchasing is total lack of control to that extent. And again, I just point to 1995. I don't know, it's my understanding that all these resolutions are prepared by the district legal counsel. And I would suggest that somebody look for the records of resolutions that were made and passed by the board in 1995 to find out. I suspect that this has already been approved by the board, what you're about to approve. But it's rendered meaningless if we're going to approve it today. Thank you.
Hi, Jerry Vanished, resident. My question would be, how could we tell auditors that we had a policy approved if the policy wasn't approved? I don't know how we can make that claim. Because they're legally auditing us. If we're telling them we have a policy and we don't have a policy, we lie to our own auditors.
Rusty Carino, resident. Excuse me. I think I addressed this issue many years ago in telling about the the vital importance of having internal control, whether you be a large corporation or a small organization, business, as we are, a small community. And I think you, in setting these things up, you've got to have that control. I don't care what your size is. And I think something needs to be done to make sure that this thing is in place. My question is, going back to the resolution that you're thinking about adopting here, does it meet the state statutes? Is it greater than, less than, or equal to? I don't want any resolution that is passed, and it's a waste of our time and your time as well, to pass something that's less than what the state statutes are. And I think somewhere along those state statutes, you should have a accumulation total. And I'm talking as a person that had purchasing experience with the Dade County school system, that you've got to be very careful so that the cumulative totals that you're making your purchase, if they fall within a relatively short time, they will add up to whatever your limits are, be it whether it be 10,000, 100,000, whatever, that it should fall underneath the same purchase. So in other words, very simply is, I don't want a bunch of small purchases being done at different intervals, from the same person or like vendors that's going to be doing the same thing that equals more than the $10,000 limits. Okay? That needs to come before the board, and that needs to come before you guys. I blame the board. And not only, I asked this question of Mr. Wright many years ago because I had a very strong feelings about purchasing in this community. And I was told, we have a procedure in the process. I not only blame him, but I blame the board for not following through on these situations. So now, after I blame these people, but we need to get on board and make these corrections and make sure, again, you have fiduciary responsibility to us for the monies. And I think it's very vital that you make these things and make them part of your body here. My other thing is the internal checks within a small community. I get nervous when one person is doing the purchasing, the approving, the signing of checks. Case in point, you follow in the newspaper the Sebring Heart situation, the lawsuit that just took place with that organization. One person was doing all the work, and it made it very easy to create the situation that they did. And that's what I'm saying here to you today. The same thing could happen in the purchasing, is that if one person is wearing many hats and doing the same thing, that's what you got to watch out for. Thank you.
Rusty, you haven't been to that many meetings lately, but Supervisor Halbeck on numerous occasions has raised those very issues. And you see where it got him, don't you?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Back to the board. Call the roll.
Supervisor Miller,
Yes.
Supervisor Hubig,
Yes.
Supervisor White,
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert,
Yes.
President McCullough.
Yes. Next on the agenda is a discussion of the district's options in regard to Mr. Griffin's complaints against Supervisor Halbig and Mr. Brian Koji's recommendations. I think I'll take the lead on this for now and see. I've got a statement I'd like to read. For the past 60 days, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Halbig and their legal representatives have attempted to agree on a formal or informal agreement concerning this issue, but have failed to do so. This issue now has been brought to the board for a course of action in resolving it. Mr. Brian Koji, the district's legal counsel in this matter, has been in constant contact with both lawyers representing both parties. He is also the only person in contact with both sides of this issue. Mr. Koji's law firm specializes in labor management cases and has attempted to find some common ground, which he had. Mr. Koji also stated that both parties expressed a willingness to resolve this issue via his informal agreement. On June 17, 2015, Mr. Koji had issued a 10-page brief overviewing both sides of the issue and also offered a recommendation as a path of action going forward. This document is available for viewing on the district's website, or anyone can obtain a printed copy of it at the district office. Mr. Koji writes the following from page 10 of his brief, and I quote, "Although I do not believe that the alleged misconduct, even if true, is actionable at this time, my recommendation is that the district focus on ensuring that any alleged harassment, whether it happened in the past or not occur in the future. In this regard, as the case law noted above emphasizes, the employer's duty in scenarios of alleged harassment is to follow a course of action reasonably likely to prevent misconduct from recurring. Baldwin 480 F3D at 1305. If future concerns of harassment have been avoided or minimized, then the district would have satisfied its duty in this case." End of quote. Mr. Koji has no bias in this matter. I personally was not involved in the October meeting between Mr. Halbig and Mr. Griffin and was not aware of the complaint letter until earlier this year. For this reason, I find it difficult to act as judge and jury in this issue. Both parties have stated their views, and that is all that I can accept as fact. I also agree with Mr. Koji that further investigations would not reveal any additional information. In conclusion, I propose the board adhere to Mr. Koji's recommendation to focus on the future and consider this issue closed and resolved by creating a file with all Mr. Griffin's complaint letters, Mr. Halbig's rebuttal letter, Mr. Miller's rebuttal letter, Mr. Koji's agreement letter, and all documents, emails, and letters written by any person involved in this matter. I also recommend that the new general manager express via email to each supervisor her requirements relating to a board member's interaction with district employees. I also recommend she schedule at an upcoming meeting a review of the 6 policies from the policy manual relating to supervisors' code of conduct and interaction with employees. So based on that, would anybody want to go proceed with this type of resolution?
Do we need a motion for that?
Not yet.
Can we be more specific about what resolution?
There is no resolution.
Why did you refer to it?
I'm just saying is if there is a consent amongst us, I will make a resolution. But right now, I'm just asking for a comment in terms of how do we proceed. If you don't want to go down this path, Mr. McClure has many other paths that we can go down that we will visit if you don't want to do it this way. So I'm just asking for direction.
I have no problem with this path at all.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have any problem with this path, but my attorney wrote it really wasn't a response to Koji's memo, just a clarification on footnote number 4, where it says Supervisor Halbig denies engaging in any prior misconduct and believes that co-signing an informal agreement with Mr. Griffin would imply that there was prior misconduct. More significantly, however, there is a concern that any formal agreement signed between Supervisor Halbig and Mr. Griffin could be used to supplant the policy manual of the Sunny Lake Improvement District, make requirements in addition to that policy manual, or contradict the policy manual. Supervisor Halbig has always conducted himself in accordance with the policy manual as an elected official of the district. Neither Supervisor Halbig nor any elected supervisor should be required to sign additional agreements that employees concerning the policy manual which already govern the actions of all employees and supervisors of the district. that's the reason I didn't sign any informal agreement. And I think I've proven the fact that I've just tried to do my job. There's anybody else is one of the other guys. I don't have any problem with going down that path. I think it would be costly to have a complete investigation, but I'm okay with it. I don't think there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't want it because there'll be depositions that people are going to have to tell the truth. The whole matter will be out in the open, and once and for all, we'll get to the truth. I was treated very, very unfairly in this whole situation, beginning with the meeting with Brian Koji that John McClure facilitated, when he well knew why Brian Koji was hired by the district. Brian Koji was hired by the district to look into these complaints. And when you set me up at that meeting, telling me that, inferring that it was otherwise, when you indicated the meeting was in reference to the public records request, and Mr. Koji had at that time already been retained by the district to handle or resolve the Griffin employee complaint. Mr. McClure was fully aware of this, but failed to disclose this to me, nor did he give me a copy of the complaints, one of which was 7 months old. I was not aware of the purpose of the meeting. John McClure was. I had no time to review the complaints, given no time to a right to appeal or to seek legal advice. Koji gave the complaints to me at that meeting on April the 30th, and John McClure full well knew what the nature of that meeting was. That's only one thing on my list of how I was treated in this whole thing. And I didn't appreciate it one bit. I didn't appreciate how some of the other people who I trusted treated me in this whole matter.
Mr. Halbert, you got a comment?
I have no comment at this time.
Mr. Miller? All righty, based on discussion, I need a motion to approve a verbal resolution to accept this issue closed and resolved by creating a file of all Mr. Griffin's complaint letters, Mr. Halbig's rebuttal letter, Mr. Miller's rebuttal letter, and Mr. Koji's agreement letter, and all documents, emails, and letters written by any person involved in this matter.
Well, before I move to accept that, you've got me lumped in there. How does that work?
Do you want to not be in there?
I'm just curious, because I still have my say coming up. But
Well, you can.
I'll accept that. I'll accept that and make a resolution to adopt that, or make a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll second the motion. Can I make one more comment? I've got a question. In the last complaint that was filed against me, there was they brought up this Ann Mitchell situation from 2009. All right? I'm curious as to how that information was. John, did you give that information to Greg Griffin?
You know, I'm sitting here, honestly, feeling like I'm under attack for something I
I
had
don't want
nothing
to
to
attack
do
you,
with.
John. I just asked you a simple question. Did
No,
you or did
I did
you
not.
Thank you
Absolutely not.
Thank you very much for answering
No, I did
me.
not.
Okay. The distribution on that memo was to Al Greasaver, Ileana Martinez, John McClure, Ann Mitchell, Supervisor Halbig, and Jim McCullum. Al Greasaver is gone. Ileana Martinez is gone. Ann Mitchell's gone. I didn't give it to him. Jim McCullum, God rest his soul, is no longer with us.
All true.
My assumption is that Ileana put this in a personnel file, either my personnel file or Ann Mitchell's personnel file. And there's a policy that says personnel files are restricted. A person can look at their own file, but they can't access anybody else's. How did Greg Griffith get a hold of this? Did anybody else here give Greg Griffith this memo?
Not that I'm aware of, but Allison just mentioned to me it is attached to a 2009 resolution. It is behind a resolution. We don't know what number
I
right
couldn't
now.
find that. I cannot find that anywhere in any document, any meeting. It was never brought up at a meeting. Never brought up at a meeting. It was never distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors. It had to be in someone's personnel file. I'm just curious as to how that document became, because it never was made public at a meeting.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly the resolution. If you want to come in the district office, I can show you the 2009 resolution book, but there is mention of it, and I don't know the exact
By
number.
the mention of it, I don't think the document's attached to anything.
Well,
So I would like an answer to that as soon as somebody can give it to me.
We'd like some time to research that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll second that motion that he had. Any more?
If I may clarify, the motion, as I understand it, is to create the file and put all the documents in the file. That's the resolution that's been referred to?
And consider the case closed.
Yes. Okay.
Any more board comment? Public comment?
Bill Jackson, resident. On numerous occasions, we've had Mr. Koji look at these sort of things. And Mr. Koji seems to have, because his purpose is to prevent any lawsuits. And he seems to have the ability, when it comes to anything, well, you didn't do anything wrong, you didn't do anything wrong, but maybe we ought to do this. And he sort of splits the baby. You didn't do anything wrong for legal purposes, but maybe we should have you read these policies and do all this. Either he did something wrong or he didn't. And I don't like this thing of Mr. Koji in there, because I knew what he was going to say. He's going to say, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but let's all warn everybody. This has happened before. Either you did something or you didn't. And if you didn't, I would want to put in there that it was unjustified. What you got written there. Instead of what you're doing, you're going to get ready to agree to say, well, I'll take these classes or whatever you agreed to do. That indicates that you may have been wrong. It doesn't say you are innocent of that. They just found no reasons for a lawsuit. And then they want to paddle your bottom a little bit. I wouldn't approve this. Either you did it or you didn't. And if you're not liable, then you shouldn't be held liable or treated like you are. So I would expect just an exoneration by the district. One other thing you mentioned, and I think I'm wrong, because I've done it before, is all the supervisors' files, personnel files, are open to the public. They're public records. I just recently went in and looked at Mr. Wright's, and I've done this in the past. So any personnel files are open to the public. And all you got to do, Mrs. Candidate, tell her that you'd like to see the files. They'll bring the file out to you and set you in a plane where another employee can sort of observe you, make sure you don't stick anything down your pants or anything. But
Can you make a copy of it? Can you make a copy of it?
Yes, you can have copies.
There's a
I got
policy.
copies
There's a
made.
policy in the handbook that says you can't make a copy of it unless it's district
It's
business.
a public
hour.
record. It's treated like a public record. And if I'm wrong, Mr. McClure can speak up and tell me.
No, you're not wrong.
So don't expect these records to be kept secret, because they're not. All of your records are wide open to scrutiny by the public. But I would ask you to reconsider that about what you're getting ready to approve here, because both you, Mr. Miller and Mr. Hobig, even though you're found no legal matter, you're going to get your hand slapped by the other stuff.
Bill,
So I would say no. I'd vote this down,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't agree to it.
I didn't do anything wrong. If we voted down, it's going to be a complete investigation. It's going to be very, very costly. It's going 9 weeks. The first thing with Mitchell took 2 weeks. 2 weeks and it was done. I'm tired of waking up for the last 9 weeks in the middle of the night thinking about this thing.
This is your choice. It's your choice to do.
Thank you.
Later on, if it's ever brought up by someone else and one of these files mysteriously appears, you accepted some sort of responsibility for that. Either you're guilty or you're not guilty, and that's all I would accept. And so what if there's going to be an investigation? maybe we need one. And whatever money it is, we can do it. Thank you very much.
Rusty Crino, resident. Gentlemen, if all parties are willing to accept Mr. Koji, he is an arbitrator, a mediator, I think we should accept it, move on, and let's get on with the business of the district. Thank you.
Tom Costi. I agree with Rusty, provided that we estimate that Mr. Koji's fees do not exceed $10,000, because I don't recall any discussion of engaging him coming before this board. I don't know who engaged him since the opinion that he rendered was addressed to John McClure. Perhaps Mr. McClure engaged him. I really don't know.
Mr. Wright hired him.
Mr. Wright hired him? And for less than 10 grand, was that the estimate?
I don't know.
Well, the rules say that if it's estimated that it could exceed $10,000, it was supposed to come before the board for approval, and it didn't. Secondly, I would suggest that Mr. Griffin's complaint from last October not be included in this file, because it's settled. That issue was settled within 15 days of it being filed with his supervisor, who happens to be Michael Wright. Michael Wright had, as a superior, he had 15 days, but as the general manager, he only had 5 days to settle that issue. And if it didn't go back to Greg Griffin with a settled decision on it, it was considered settled. That's what the policy says. That's what the policy manual says. So that being a settled issue has nothing to do with what's taken place since then. Secondly, Kurt, you said that the first time that you saw that complaint was, I think you said in January? I'm not sure.
I just said earlier this year.
Earlier this year. You were on the distribution list of that letter of Greg Griffin's.
I did
and
not.
Mr. Wright's. You were on the distribution list, so was David Helbig. He didn't get one either.
That's my point.
The point is, it never got distributed. As a matter of fact, the letter's undated. If you look at it, there's no date on it. Does anybody have a clue when it was created? It could have been created
Yeah, I do.
in the past month.
I do, because the letter was addressed to me as president of the board at that time. And the October...
And so you did see it, but nobody else did.
Well, yes, and I discussed it, and we had a thorough discussion, and it was decided not to move on with it, and that's
Okay.
the way it should have been settled.
So that's what Mr. Wright's response then to Greg Griffin was. It was settled. And
Well,
why put it in this?
I consider Mr. Wright's letter a CYO letter.
Correct.
And
Correct.
it was thoroughly discussed. And I was party to that. Mr. Wright was party to that.
Mhm.
You'll notice in that letter, Mr. Wright said it did not rise to the question of any legal
Right.
situations. And with that having been said, where else do you go?
Well, so why include it in this
Well, I
file,
don't know.
this new investigation?
All I'll tell you is that the letter was addressed to me, it was copied to the other supervisors, and I was not aware that it was not distributed to the other supervisors.
I think you had confirmation this morning that Mr. Helbig and Mr. McCullough didn't receive it, and I don't know about the other two gentlemen.
Well, it was not up to me to distribute that letter.
Thank you.
Back to the board. Any more comment?
Yeah, I have one question, and this is a little bit off topic, but I'm just curious. And John, don't take this as an attack. How was Mr. Koji selected? I thought that all of our legal representation that I can remember was a matter of process coming before the board for approval. So why was this not? Does this not happen in this particular case?
My understanding is Mr. Koji had been retained by the board as their labor law legal counsel years ago. In fact, as earlier indicated, there are a number of occasions where Mr. Koji appeared on behalf of the board to investigate labor law matters. So frankly, when Mr. Wright said he was going to retain Mr. Koji to look into this, it seemed to be an appropriate course of action to me.
Is there anything in the record that states that he's retained by us, or a retainer, or anything to that effect?
I don't think you'll find anything in the record that says the board approved his retention, no.
Well, then we've and again, this is by the board, but I bring it up for future reference, that in any case that we're talking about legal situation in this district, the possibility of representation, it comes before the board. And in that case, it should have come before the board.
I believe the board, I'd have to go check the minutes, but I'd be quite surprised if Mr. Wright had not informed the board that it had been referred to Mr. Koji for this purpose. I believe you were.
After the fact.
But nobody on the board objected to his representation for this purpose.
After the fact.
I'm just saying. You know, I mean, if there's a concern about what he's done or how he's done it, let's call it like it is. But the bottom line is that everybody on the board knew he was doing this investigation and nobody objected to his retention. So I'm not sure what the complaint is.
Did I say a complaint? It was a question.
No, sir, the board did not retain him.
Thank you.
Call the roll.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
President McCullough?
Yes. Next on the action agenda is Supervisor Miller's presentation of his rebuttal letter.
Well, this is sort of an anticlimax after the last discussion, but my attorney filed on June 13th a letter. I think it was addressed to Mr. Koji and then referred to Mr. McClure in terms of my situation and my, I guess you call it for lack of anything else, my defense of this allegation. I'll just read one paragraph from that letter and then I'll proceed from there. And Allison, be sure this is in the record, please. It says, Supervisor Miller has never treated any employee of the district in any way other than in a professional manner consistent with the district's policies and procedures. Supervisor Miller will continue to act as he has in the past in the best interests of the residents of Sun and Lake and of all the employees of the district. The allegations against Supervisor Miller made by Mr. Griffin in the two complaints discussed above are categorically untrue, entirely without merit, and should be withdrawn by Mr. Griffin without further action. My problem in this situation is that I guess 95% of all of Mr. Griffin's concerns, claims, allegations, whatever, were directed against Supervisor Halbig. And it's sort of like I'm out there floating in space. He made all these allegations regarding Supervisor Halbig, and then he takes two shots at me. The problem is the one shot that he took at me involved a sunshine law violation, which didn't happen. And if anybody has the interest in terms of understanding what the situation is, I've got 25 pages of documentation that are posted on the website that will tell you exactly how this is transparent. And again, the fact that I didn't even make that statement. So I'm sitting here in purgatory with an unresolved issue that in a conversation with our attorney, John McClure, yesterday, tells me that that's where it's going to sit because no legal reference or claim has been made. Is that correct, John?
There's been no complaint to the state attorney's office, sir, and that's the only office that can investigate a violation of the sunshine law.
Well, I can just tell you that, as Supervisor Halbig said, I've been waking up each night on this. and I'm real upset about it. And this resolution, it closes things, but does it close it for me? I don't know. John, does it close it for me?
Sure it does.
Close it in what way, sir? I'm only respectfully saying, if, in my opinion, if someone were to raise a complaint, I think your attorney has raised a very good defense for you. I think that everything that he has asserted here is very appropriate to the subject matter. But if a formal complaint were submitted, it doesn't close anything. It just reopens it. I can't change that.
All right, well, I'll accept that. To give you an idea of the level to which this has sunk on the part of Mr. Griffin, is there were 2 complaints against Supervisor Halbeck. One was on April 23rd. I'm not talking about the first one that we discussed last October. It was April 23rd. The other one was April 28th. In the April 23rd complaint, it was, 4 or 5 or 6 pages of allegations against Supervisor Halbeck. In one paragraph, it said, oh, by the way, Supervisor Miller violated the Sunshine Law. And in the complaint of April 28th, it got even worse because the same thing happened. There were 4 or 5 pages of allegations against Supervisor Halbeck, and oh, by the way, Mr. Miller looked crosswise at me during the meeting and said it was directed, Mr. Griffin said, well, it's certainly directed at him. Well, in the documentation, you will go back to the minutes of that meeting, and in no way, in any part of that discussion, was Mr. Griffin referenced. And you know, the worst thing about this is that this district has been in turmoil for the last 2+ months because of these allegations. I know I've been distracted by it. I know certainly Supervisor Halbeck and President McCullough have been distracted by it. But that means that the business of this district has gone begging during that period of time. And now we have a situation with a new general manager that needs all the help that she can get and all of our support as she moves into her new responsibilities. And what happens? We have a key guy, who happens to be the same guy that made these allegations, walk off the job. We have projects unfinished. We have projects in trouble. We have projects coming up. We got all sorts of things to deal with in this area. And we're relying, I guess, on Poston, right, Tanya?
Yes, sir.
To get us through this thing. But I want you all to think about that as this district moves forward, and it should move forward as a team. Well, we're missing a so-called team member. So just think about that. And I'll rest my case on that basis.
John, I'd be under the impression that if his rebuttal letter is included in that file, that would actually close that issue, and it would be up to Mr. Griffin to file another complaint to reopen it. Wouldn't that be the case?
The issue has probably received more press than it deserved, in my opinion,
Right.
simply because it was a statement, and the district has no ability or obligation to investigate sunshine matters. That is strictly within the purview of the state attorney. So certainly the letter can be included. From the district's perspective, that would close the matter, I think.
Yeah.
We certainly are doing nothing else about it. And
Okay.
so that would be my interpretation.
Do you have a comment?
Kurt? Question. Our so-called utilities person is on sick leave. How long does he have on sick leave?
Actually, Tanya can answer that. We talked about that the other day, but
I don't have that answer just yet, or I don't have a confirmation from the doctor just yet.
How many?
well, he has sick days coming and he has vacation days coming, which he can use if he so chooses. The number, I have no idea what the number is.
He's got up to 12 weeks. that he can take family medical leave. But that has not, I understanding that has not been approved yet? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have not received the proper documentation requesting that yet?
Not yet. I mean, there's a 15-day rule there, so we're still within that 15 days.
And within this 12 weeks, it's my understanding that once any vacation or sick leave is exhausted, then that person goes on unpaid leave. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, let's move on. Add-on items. Tanya, you have any add-on items?
No, sir.
Petitions, communications,
None.
staff reports,
None at this time.
general counsel.
The first thing I would note was the mediation in this matter was in fact conducted on the Sun and Lake Severino Ayala matter. I was not present at the mediation. I believe that the general manager did go. My understanding was the mediation was unsuccessful in reaching any resolution. I believe you had your deposition taken as well on Thursday?
Yesterday, yes.
Yes, okay. So they are in the process of completing the deposition process. No settlement has been reached, and the matter is proceeding forward. I only have a couple of other minor things.
John, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
You said a settlement has been reached?
No, sir. I said
Oh,
it
it
was
has not been reached. I'm sorry.
Was not reached. Okay. Yes, sir. I think at the last meeting, Mr. Jackson brought up an issue of my representation of Mr. Griffin in the bankruptcy matter, his bankruptcy matter. Reviewing the bankruptcy documents, my name did appear on the documents, but it appeared as the attorney for Highlands Independent Bank, who was a creditor in the matter, actually adverse to Mr. Griffin's position, not in representation of him, so I'll clear that up before the board. I'd forgotten that I had represented the bank in the matter, but my name was on the document. You are
John, excuse me, and along those lines, I have an affidavit of attorney that you made in December of this past year regarding Greg Griffin's bankruptcy and judgments and so forth, and I think it was in reference to purchase perhaps of property. Were you were representing the bank again in that matter?
That was a title clearance issue. The bottom line is Mr. Griffin was buying a house. We were representing the seller of the house, okay? Mr. Griffin, in purchasing that house, there were the title issues related to the bankruptcy. I had to examine the bankruptcy file and determine whether or not any liens would attach to the property, in which case we would have to make exceptions on the title policy the seller was providing to the buyer. That's the purpose of the affidavit.
Yeah, I was just interested in that. I understand the bankruptcy, but there were several judgments you listed as well. I thought those would have been cleared from any further action with that bankruptcy.
I'd have to review that letter again at this point.
Okay.
The bottom line is
Right here.
that letter was written in representation of the seller in order to clear the title.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about my relationship or representation? No. Okay. No. And the only other thing I have is, Mr. Halbig, if I have upset you, I publicly apologize. I never intended to set you up, and I'd be happy to discuss everything with you after the meeting. I don't really want to make it a public affair such as this, but the bottom line is
I choose not to.
Okay. So you don't want to talk to me about it either? You don't want to talk to me about it after the meeting? Okay, we'll leave it at that then. Bottom line is, if I was never attempting to set you up for anything. My representation is on behalf of the district, and if it appears that way to you, my apologies. That's all I have. Thank you.
General Manager's report.
I briefly want to just discuss, we had some break-ins here in the district yesterday and the day before, and that individual was caught, and security did assist in that. I've been in touch with Mr. Hurley. I've had, quite a few staff members on conferences and out of the office in the past week and a half. but I just want to let everyone know that that individual was caught yesterday in speaking with Mr. Hurley. And everyone knows I did have my deposition yesterday in the Severino case. I was there until 4:15 yesterday afternoon. And so that I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. And I don't have anything else at this time.
Well, Tanya, I thought we were going to get a report on the cart pass.
David Bell.
David Bell. Apologize, I had to step out for a second whenever the staff reports came up. The cart pass situation currently, y'all all are aware, Harstein was put on a work stoppage notice, and in reference to what we kind of settled on was he would have to replace hole number 2 through hole number 4. All of that work has been removed, and it has all been re-poured, and he did hire another subcontractor to do the concrete work. It is much better than the previous work that was being poured, so everything is back on schedule.
See, you're digging the pond. It's almost done, I think.
They started digging the pond on Wednesday, and it should be completed today.
Yeah. Looks like a war zone behind my house.
It's everything is. It does look like at the time, but it's all roughed in.
Oh, I understand.
It's going to be very nice when it's all said and done.
I know.
I have another question. Tanya?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I did say that we were on schedule. Unfortunately, we're not typically on schedule. We're originally, the original timeline was to be done by the end of July. With these setbacks, we're anticipating to have to push that deadline back to the end of August.
David, while you're talking about the pond, is there enough watershed to keep that water in there, or is it going to be basically a dry?
It's water in there now.
Well, it's
the water that's in there now is groundwater,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
we anticipate that there being water in that pond year round.
What would it cost to line that thing?
We've never. I don't think lining it because of the water table level. I don't
Okay.
think lining it would be.
It's going to hold. It's
necessary.
going to hold its own pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tanya, on the tennis courts, it's my understanding that Excavation Point has finished its asphalt work.
They have finished.
And it's curing properly.
Fencing should be up this afternoon, weather permitting, yes.
And I noticed they cleaned up the access road there on the south side.
They did, yes.
Are they done with their cleanup on the rest of the site?
I haven't spoke with Tal yet about that, but I'll let the board know anything additional he's going to take care of as far as
They're
cleanup.
serving as our general contractor, is that correct?
They are, yes, Excavation Point.
And Gator is now overseeing
Yes,
that project?
correct.
Do we have an arrival date for the Welsh tennis people?
No, sir, not yet. I'll bring that to the board as soon as I know.
Thank you.
Unfinished business?
None,
New business? None. Committee reports?
none.
None. Public comment? Here we go.
Bill Jackson, due to the nature of the agenda, Mr. McClure got to speak before I did, because I planned on apologizing to him about the question about the bankruptcy. I've since then gotten all the paperwork on that bankruptcy. Now, but what confused me was I did find a document, I don't know if that's the one that Mr. Miller's referring to, about Highlands Bank going after Mr. Griffin for non-payment of a loan. No, on the back of that, I believe there were some descriptions of land. But that all was generated because Mr. Griffin bought a piece of equipment couldn't pay for it, and the bank went after him. And so I know that was on your letterhead. I think it's the same one, but I wondered why the property description was back there. But the front part of that was about the bank going after him for their money, which he turned the item back in, and but it still was a lawsuit. And I don't think he fought it. I think he just accepted a default judgment. I'm just trying to remember it. So I apologize for the question about the loss, about the bankruptcy. But there was a bankruptcy back in 2010. It doesn't mean anything to you?
No.
It doesn't?
No.
Why
I
should
think
it?
it
Has
means a
nothing to do
lot.
with the district.
I think it means a lot.
No, it
Because
don't.
I don't know how Mr. Griffin got here, but if you check his background, it is replete with him not paying his bills and all these other things. He should have never been hired here because he has responsibility. Now look what we've come up with. I wouldn't hire him because his judgment is questionable. If a man can't even pay his own bills on a regular basis, and for many different things, he gets all these little companies which have no assets. And then all of a sudden he buys something in the name of that company. Can't pay the bill. And they sue him. So I've never heard of any place where they would hire someone like that, knowingly hire someone like that, who has that kind of background. This is all part of that. His judgment has been questioned. He made a mistake on that one with the where he tied into the main line over there. Bad judgment. He was supposed to get $800 to that. As soon as that gentleman would not accept going to his driveway, someone should have said, "Whoa, I can't do this. We're going to have to talk and work this out." He didn't. And I understand a lot of the time he wasn't even there. So you asked for all this when someone didn't check into his past. Now you're getting it. He's working out something right now about the thing. I told you when I first came up here the first time, you fire the man. He has a very bad record. He has a very bad record, and we should have never hired him. If you had looked into his background, you'd have found that to be true. It didn't take me long to find it all.
It's too late for that. Thank you.
Oh, it's not too late. He's still here. What does this mean?
You've had your 3 minutes.
What if I want 2 more?
Then ask for it.
Hmm?
Then ask for it.
Can I have 2 more?
Okay.
Fine. I don't need the time. I just wanted to, and please don't use hand gestures next time. I find that rude and contemptible.
Thank you.
So, and you're sitting up there chewing gum. I find that rude too.
Okay. That's fine.
So I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Don't wave me off next time.
Thank you.
Tom Costi for the last time. I'm very sensitive about this whole situation because in the initial approach to the district, which was the public records request, my name appeared. And that's the second time that's happened. And as a matter of fact, it happened in exactly the same phrasing that the first time occurred during the Ann Mitchell situation. It was obvious that somebody pulled out those old records and put them in Greg Griffin's hands. Maybe that somebody was Greg Griffin. I don't know. I don't know how he got those records. But simply because, as occurred the last time, actually it wasn't the Mitchell situation. I apologize. It was when Grieshaber, the investigation into the dismissal of Al Grieshaber, which was put in the hands of the state's attorney. There was a state's attorney investigation. It was in the actual phrasing of that document that my name came up, simply because I'm a friend of Dick Miller and a friend of David Helbig. I happen to have worked on both of their campaigns. I was campaign treasurer for a couple of election cycles, and because of that, it was assumed that because of that relationship, there was more than likely a violation of the Sunshine Law. I haven't been accused. I didn't know about that investigation in the Grieshaber situation until after the case was closed. It was judged as non-actionable by the state's attorney. There were no charges filed in the whole thing. I called the state's attorney trying to find out who put my name in that file. Google, Gmail was approached and asked for 4 months of my email records. CenturyLink was approached and asked for 4 months of my email records. Michael Wright was brand new here at the time. He turned over anything that he could find in the district files with my name on it. Never told me. I didn't learn about this until after I saw some of the paperwork after the case was dropped by the state's attorney. I called the state's attorney, and he told me that actually it was Al Grieshaber that suggested that I be investigated in that particular case because he knew I was a friend of Dick and David. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about that. And I just want to say that the situation with Mr. Griffin, it's understandable that he is on sick leave right now. During this last few months, it's come to the board's attention and the rest of our attention that Mr. Griffin is burning a lot of different fires. He had a years-long lawsuit taking place with a company that he acted as an agent for called Florida Georgia Grows, which actually got dissolved before the lawsuit got settled. The lawsuit just got settled a couple of months ago. Greg Griffin actually took a contract in his name to do the final cleanup of the vegetation down in Collier County last August. Greg Griffin 2014, year and a half ago, got a 2-year contract with the city of Sebring to spread pesticide on the city of Sebring. This last fall, Greg Griffin's contract with the city of Sebring got renegotiated, and he got an extension on it. It now runs through to 2017. That lawsuit, those side issues with his Central Florida Aquatics company, his Total Site Solutions, which was dissolved and has over $300,000 worth of judgments on record against it, all of this stuff happened within the last 4 years. I think I would be in a basket case if I were trying to burn all of that stuff. And yet it appears now that the focus is on, well, if you read the paperwork, he seems to be trying to blame David Helbig for all of his troubles. I understand the troubles, and I actually, as you know, I've told both of you guys at times that I feel for Greg Griffin. I feel that Greg Griffin was put in a situation here that was beyond his capabilities. He was enabled by a general manager who had a hands-off policy, which is one of the same complaints that took place in his dismissal down at the county. So I had to get that off my chest. It's excruciating to me that this thing has gone as far as it has. It's embarrassing. I've tried to publicize some of it just by taking a very non-committal stance on where I stand with regard to the arguments and the issues. I've tried to inform people with an e-blast that I've had in the past that I use during election cycles, and I've got a couple of people that said they didn't want to see it anymore, and I understand that, so I took them off the list. But at any rate, I hope this thing is buried now, and we can all put it behind us. I know I'm going to try, because I believe I've lost as much sleep as either David or Dick. And the other thing I do want to say is, I don't know how many of you know, but this is not the big battle that Dick Miller is facing now, and it's something that needs to be put aside and just forget about it. Thank you.
Rusty Carino. On a lighter note, I'd like to back up and correct something that I said. Earlier, I praised Mr. Ford for doing an outstanding job, when I should have praised Mr. Bell for doing an outstanding job and some property work and removing a tree out of my backyard. So, Mr. Bell, I apologize, and thank you very much for you and your staff. Last time, I asked a question, and I'm sorry Mr. Riff is not here, but maybe you can help me, Tanya. I asked a question about the bond and who paid for the bond. And I was told at that time, at last meeting, that Mr. Riffin said that the bond... Okay. Hear me now? Hear it? Okay. I was told last time that I asked a question about a bond, and in asking the question about the bond, it was told to me then that the bond money is taken out at the end of the contract or something like that, along that line.
No, sir, it's paid at the beginning.
Okay, it's taken out at the very beginning, so the contractor is paying the initial monies to the bond company for the bond, correct?
The contractor billed the district, and then the district paid for that bond, and then he submitted it.
Okay, so he's putting some money, the contractor is taking some money out of his pocket and paying for it, correct?
It's part of the contract
Okay.
for the district to pay.
All right, okay, I just want to make sure that we are not taking the money out of our kitty and paying for it at a later date, that he's coming along and paying us back.
No, the bond is part of the actual contract for the district to pay.
Okay, so the district is paying the front money.
That's correct. It was paid at the very beginning, along with mobilization.
Okay, my question is, why are they allowed to work on our money, if that's the case? In other words, I have a problem with anybody working on our money. This is the impression I'm getting.
I could address that if you would like, Mr. President. It is very common practice for when a bid is submitted, for part of that bid to include the cost of the bond that's required by the bidding entity. That's us, okay? So it was indeed, in this case, also included as part of the bid price, even inclusive of that bond. He was the lowest bidder, and so he was selected to do the project. Now, when you say on our money, I'm not sure what you're saying, because the board acted to modify his contract in some way at the last meeting, okay? We said, okay, you got these problems, you have 15 working days to cure them, and this is what you need to do. He has done that. The bond would only come into play, the bond is not in play right now. Make that clear, okay? There's been no claim against this bond at all, and the reason for that is we have worked the deal out with this contractor. The only way the bond would be involved is if this contractor was in default, taken off the job, then the bond company would have to hire another contractor to come in and finish the job.
All right, my question is this, okay? In paying for that bond, when is the money initially laid out to pay for that bond?
At the beginning of the project, before the project ever begins.
Okay, and whose pocket is who's shelling that money out to the bondholder?
As I related to you, the contractor normally is the one who gets the bond from the company, and we are the protected party under the bond, okay? But he gets that money, the district pays the contractor the contract, part of the contract price, that he uses that contract price money to buy the bond.
So the contractor is in essence paying for the bond?
Yes. As part of the contract price.
Okay,
Yes.
the money's coming out of his pocket. I was a little concerned about the initial monies coming out of our pocket, the district. And if that's the case, well, hell, he doesn't have any skin in the game if that was the case. But if he is paying for the amount, I have no problem up front. Okay? Thank you.
Claude Williams, resident, and offer an opinion from Claude's world. There's times in life we wish we could just have a nice big bonfire of all the crap that's gone down previously. I would like to see us today just lay out a new start in life. We have a new general manager. We have cleared up all the problems that the supervisor has had. So let's start a new day. Thank you.
Very good comment.
Back to the board. Any more discussion, the board?
No, sir.
I'm going to call a 10-minute recess, and then we'll start with the budget. So if anybody wants to leave, they can do so at now.
I presume that includes me?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You don't have to stay. I will excuse you. Bring the papers.
We'll start the discussion, budget discussion with road and drainage. That section.
We were in the middle of speaking about Unit 5 drainage when the electricity went out 2 weeks ago. And I
Well,
believe, go ahead.
no, go ahead. You finish.
I believe you had listened to the audio. I think that the main decision now is whether we move forward with get a true analysis of what this project would take. I mean, we have a drainage master plan in the district, excuse me, and Unit 5 has been, as far as, severe or moderate severe or whatever, Unit 5 has a number one priority based on Gator and Mr. Griffin's analysis.
Right.
So at this point, we don't really have a true cost of how many homes, how many streets that we're talking. I'd like to see that before I could actually recommend what it would actually cost us in the end. But I think this is just a start, and it can be phased in. It can be phased in over a number of years.
Right. Go ahead, Dave. You got some
Okay,
comments.
well, I looked at the minutes of the meeting when I forget what date this was, where they talked about, and they identified it, Unit 5 as number one problem, I think, in residential areas.
Correct.
Then I went over and looked after we had that heavy rain, and to me, the first four streets perpendicular to Granada, and then they can look at it on an overall basis, but that's Almeria, Barbarossa, Cantora, and Durango are fairly. They were bad at that time. Once you get to El Rado, it seems to be okay. Everything was pretty much dry. I guess the main problem seems to be the culvert failures. Some are fine, some are bad, in some cases they don't even have a culvert.
Correct.
Which is blocking everything. I think culverts need to be replaced, but they need to be set on the proper pitch. And then prior to cleaning the swales, which is probably our responsibility. But I don't know. They'll have to tell us whether the runoff goes in the right direction or in order for it to get to the storm drain. They may have to add some storm drains. I don't know. But it really needs to be, like you say, needs to be priced out. But we have to determine whether or not what portion of it's going to be ours and which portion of it's going to be theirs.
Correct. That's a big
Or if we want to pass part of it along and maybe agree to do the engineering and making everything set right. So I guess they need to analyze it, price it, and come back with some sort of a recommendation. I don't think the whole unit is bad. I think the way it looks like the first four streets are the real problem areas. So that's all
I'd like to see a full report on that, and that'd be logical to start with A, and get into pricing of what it would cost on the culvert, and actually do a full review, starting with the first street there, Almeria, I believe.
But I think the issue is larger than that, because if we embark on this project, we're starting down a road that can lead us to district-wide program regarding correction of these various issues throughout the district, and we've got plenty of them.
We do.
So I think we have to be extremely careful as how we break down who does what and who pays for what. And before we can, I would think, authorize any type of remedial action, we need to have it set in our own mind as a policy, and I hate that overused word, but it is what it is, that we need to understand, where we're going and how much it's going to cost the district.
Oh, I agree.
Because it's just a drop in the bucket.
It could be, and that's why we, this leaving the money in the budget to actually do a full review, see what we have, and then go from there.
Go ahead.
So what do we do about all the money we have allocated to that particular purpose? I mean, we've got other monies that are allocated to other areas like the Miranda Home Phase 2, whatever, that if we get into this one, maybe they need to be diverted into fixing this problem and making a list and taking care of the
Worst one
worst.
That Phase 2, the permits have been pulled and finished, and it should be going, Gator's preparing the bid documents right now for that area. So I'd like to give you a summary of that, of what we're actually, what Gator is working on currently.
Tanya, before we go forward, let's review the schedule that we have for the budget process. We have another meeting July 10th.
Correct.
Are we going to be addressing the budget then?
Yes, definitely.
And are we going to have a workshop in July?
We haven't discussed it yet. I mean, if we need to.
My
we
thought
can.
is that July 10th, all the issues and comments that we brought up at this meeting, you guys would go back and address those and bring them back, and then we'll kind of see how that goes and then decide if we need a workshop after that. If it goes fairly smoothly, we can probably do it in one meeting in August and one
Correct.
meeting in September. So
That's correct.
Well, don't confuse a workshop with a public hearing. Workshop is when we delve into specific issues and so forth, and the public usually doesn't talk at those meetings, and I don't know if we need that or not. We need to also decide whether or not we're going to have one or two public hearings. And I think that we're obligated to obviously have at least one, but I'm not sure.
In the past, we've done two.
yeah,
Did we do two last year?
We did, yes.
we have two in September,
did.
don't we? Scheduled, I believe.
We do. One of them is to approve the tentative budget. The other is a final budget.
Yeah.
But I believe the public hearings were in August meeting and then the first meeting in September.
Yeah, which would make sense.
Correct. Okay.
But I think there's a question whether or not a workshop is warranted. I mean, it could be a make-work thing.
Let's see how the July
I
10th
think
meeting.
we'll base it on July, how we do in July.
Yeah.
I went and looked at those streets too, and Greg was talking about replacing culverts and driveways and, who's responsible. And I didn't find one driveway that was failing over there. Maybe I missed one or two, but basically all of them seem to be in pretty good shape. And my question is, why, when we're dredging the swale areas, or the ditches, whatever you want to call them, why couldn't we side bore through those existing culverts and just put a appropriate size sleeve in there, which would basically allow the water to drain through and we wouldn't have to dig anything up? And if it's a 10-inch culvert, put a 10-inch sleeve in there. If it's a 12-inch, put a 12-inch, whatever. And to me, I think that would save us a ton of money. It would save us a lot of headaches in terms of who's paying for the driveway kind of thing. So I guess when you guys come back with your next recommendation is, I would like somebody to have Gator look into whether that's even a feasible approach or not. I don't know if it is, but I know they can bore vertically. I don't know why they can't bore horizontally. So.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. And it's another way, I think, to stretch our dollars in this area, because I know that we've got flow problems all over the place. We have one on my street, for example, that you go north to south, and it depends on how far north you are, the better off you are. And by the time you get down to Netta, that curve there, you have standing water for days and days and days when everybody else is dry. And it's a matter of flow and a matter of gravity. And if we could do what Kurt's suggesting, instead of tearing everything up, we could stretch our dollars that way.
We can blow a lot of those culverts out with water once a ditch is dug out enough to open up that culvert. A lot of those culverts are only about half of them are showing.
Greg's point was a lot of them had collapsed. Which,
And that may be true when you blow them out. They may be rusted in the middle.
But still, maybe what Kurt's suggesting is feasible.
Yes.
I'll have Gator and George
Yeah.
look into it before
Okay.
the next meeting.
The only other thing on this road and drainage maintenance, we discussed streetlights and the fact that we've had work orders into Duke Energy for 2 years for 3 or 4 streetlights. And my suggestion, is it longer than 2 years?
It's at least 2 years.
Yeah. My suggestion is that we put some money in this budget, say, and I'll just pick a number, $15,000 for street lighting, which would allow the district to actually create work orders for more street lights, knowing that it's going to take 2 or 3 years to actually get the street light. But by doing that, it gives you authority to go create some work orders to get the process started. So as we move forward, every year you keep putting that $15,000 in there, whatever the number is, and you start building up a cash account, if you will.
We got a line item for 70,000 right now.
Yeah, but
That's the electricity.
that's the
Oh, just
electricity.
the,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Pay the bills?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what we haven't done in the past, and what I think we need to do regarding Duke Energy, is we need some sort of, pressure's not the right word, but we need concentrated effort to get their attention, and even if it has to occur in the public arena, then it should occur in the public arena, because we are sure third-class citizens around here in regards to poles and lighting and this spraying. They just come in and spray, so, I mean, we need to get a handle on all that. And Kurt's right, we need to address these streetlights.
We can add 15,000 into the general fund budget. Is that the wish of the board?
I think that would
Yeah.
make 4 or 5 lights, I think, is about all it's going to
In
do.
fact, I didn't even know that we had streetlights on order. The only one I knew about was the one in the parking lot there across from the tennis courts.
Now, they're Unit 2 issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there's work orders in for Unit 2, but that's, to me, where the next,
We need a review.
these funds would
Yes.
go, would be to Unit 2. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm not ready to move on yet.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the paving. We have $300,000 in there, and it's been, I guess, at least 4 years since we've had appraisal of our street conditions. And I felt last year we were kind of even reaching to implement some of these projects, particularly the stuff over in Unit 15. You remember the one that Mike Wright said that's where development is going to occur and so forth. And we paid a bundle for those 5 streets. And of course, it's just us and the chipmunks right now that are using that. The one that made the most sense and program I think we need to pursue is to make sure our arterials are up to standard. And the Cortez project last year was a very good one from that standpoint because we had some serious deterioration. And if you remember, we didn't finish the whole project. We paved, I think, about 2/3 of it. It's expensive. But we have a stretch there between Caballero, I think, and Balboa that we need to address. Other than that, I would sure like to sort of hedge our bets this year on further funding of paving because I don't think there's any critical issues. But of course, we haven't looked at it carefully, and I'd like to perhaps shove some of that money over into this maintenance project if we can. It'd be a 1-year hiatus, except for the Cortez project, but I would think we could move a couple $100,000 over there.
Shouldn't take more than 100 to do Cortez.
Mr. Wright did talk to the county about an assessment of our roads, and I haven't seen that. I haven't been in contact with anyone at the county yet. I mean, that is definitely something we could consider.
Well, you got to talk to Ramon Garavetti, and if you don't talk to him, he's not going to be paying attention. But we do have in the files, we have 2 former appraisals of our streets, one of which was done by the county, and I believe the other one was done by one of our private sector companies. And I think that goes back to Greashaver days, David, when we started this resurfacing. Remember, we went for a number of years and there was no money in there for resurfacing at all. So,
Yeah, one on the board said, I don't care if they crack, crumble, and fall apart. I'm not putting any money in the roads, but
Yeah, well,
we put a lot of money in the roads since then, though.
and it's a good thing too, because that's a foundation we need to protect. So we have, if I remember correctly, we have a 60% condition factor in that. And having been in the transportation consulting business for years, that's a pretty good guideline for how you're evaluating your streets. You do it from two areas. Number one is condition, and number two from flow. And of course, Sun Lake is not having a congestion problem at the present time, but I don't think we'll get an appraisal in time for a specific budget action, but we should push for that and update it. And if you don't have it in your files, Tanya, I might have something back at the house on that.
Well, if not, Mr. Wright should have something, and
We will look for the
he's on
one,
retainer.
the one that you speak
Let's
of
try
that
it.
the county did 3 or 4 years ago. We should have that somewhere. Okay, we'll get a copy.
I'll check my records.
Okay, and another issue that we do have at the district office, we have a drainage and flooding issue in the parking lot, and that has to be addressed. I've had that on my radar now for about 6 months. And during heavy rains, I mean, even when the sprinklers come on every day in the mornings, there's water in the one side of the parking lot to where you can't park there. I mean, I think some of us have had those same issues.
Driveway gets flooded too.
I'm sorry?
The entrance, the driveway entrance
The entrance
gets
of the
flooded.
driveway is also flooded, that whole section along Sun Lake Boulevard. So that's something I'd like to address as part of the budget for next year.
We done with this? On to utility
I believe so.
fund. Well, I guess I'll start, get the ball rolling on this one. I've mentioned in the past that I think it's improper for us not to budget for depreciation. And I know I've been informed that governments don't budget for depreciation, and I understand that, and I also understand why businesses do. But the point is that someday the water plant's going to need to be replaced. Someday the sewer plant's going to need to be replaced. And not to foresee that, and not to plan for that, and not to budget funds somehow, I think is just us not doing right for the district. And so based on the fact that public bodies don't budget by depreciation, I would like to suggest that the URIFA amount, which is what's $7?
And 10 cents.
$7.10, which basically is somewhat of a fund that is building funds to be used whenever we need it, that we look at raising that rate so that instead of $7.10 floating over to the fund, if you will, that we look at maybe $10 or $12 to get floated over. And obviously, by doing that, then the water rates and sewer rates would go up. Also, Mr. Wright, before he left, prepared a water rate comparison between local communities, and we were 9% below the lowest, which was the city of Sebring, and we are 45% below the city of Sebring outside the city limits. So we are way too competitive in my mind, and I think we need to address this somehow. I don't know how you want to do it, but I think it needs to be addressed.
That URIF is not broken down on the bill anymore, is it? It's rolled into the bill?
It's not on the bill.
Not on the bill.
It's a calculation that we do by meter in the district.
It's an assumed number that is put, is just...
We pull a meter
journal
report.
entry and move it over into the...
Yes, and we move it from one pot to the another. I guess you could say it that way.
Well,
But there is a calculation we do monthly for that, yes.
Okay. I'm looking at the same spreadsheet that you put together. I think you put it together, or somebody put it together over
I
there.
did, or Jenny may have helped me
Yeah.
3 or 4 months ago.
And we had a discussion about the revenue versus cost, and it's out of balance. And I wouldn't mind seeing a phase in of a utility increase of maybe $2.50 this coming year and $2.50 the following year, which would raise it $5, which would we would still be the cheapest guy on the block. I don't know how anybody could really argue about that, but and somebody else may have another number or a better number.
Would a percentage be better than a flat rate?
I don't know. I mean,
Well, if you want,
either way, it can break it down to a percentage or a flat rate.
if you want to do it to the RIF fund, I think an amount is better for you, isn't it?
It
Like
is.
take the 710
It is,
to
yes.
960 based on Dave's recommendation, and then the next year it would go to 1210.
I don't know why we have to raise it. I think what we need to do is take that ARIFA fund and split it in half and put half of it into what you're talking about as a fail-safe for the plants that we need, and don't play around with our utilities. Everybody is happy with what we've got. You start.
Well, I'd be happy too.
Now wait a minute. You start raising the rates, and there's no stopping. Okay? You're starting to talk like the federal government. All you want to do is start raising the rates to cover something. We don't need to raise the rates. We got enough money. All we have to do is start spending it wisely. Okay?
Well,
Quit trying to raise the rates.
how long has it been since we had a utility rate increase?
We had a rate decrease in December of 2012, and it was a significant decrease at that.
Tanya?
Yes.
When was the
Tanya?
last increase?
I know, I don't know, it was before.
Well, look, we missed
Watching
the
it.
boat when we did that because we went through the whole public hearing resolution process, a laborious process to lower the rates. And if we want to go back, we got to go through the same process, whereas you take that $7.10, which is in a separate pew, separate category, doesn't need anything else other than adjustment, you could attach your increase in that specific area, and you can adjust it as you go forward. I disagree with Rick from the standpoint that we're already taking half of your RIFA money out this year for that maintenance project, and we got 4 years of payback on that. But we don't have to go through all this hearing stuff, I don't believe, if we adjust that special, and that would address what Kurt's talking about in terms of building up a backlog, a better backlog, I should say, for those projects. So I would recommend we do that, and perhaps in the cost range that David's talking about, we do it, the first year, and then we'll see the next year.
We're only a couple years, maybe 3 years away from having to connect both of those sewer plants. That's going to cost a pretty good chunk of money. We're going to need some money there.
Yeah, there was discussion, it didn't show up in this budget, but there was discussion about doing that at a couple meetings ago, and I think it said it was going to cost $150,000. I was surprised that it didn't show up in his budget. Remember Greg said something about connecting so they can balance
The capacity's not
the capacity?
where, correct. The capacity is not where we want it to be because we have at the Unit 23 plant, it's much lower capacity right
Right,
now.
so
And
there's a-
as we receive growth in the community, we expect that.
Yeah.
But
so
we do
there-
have,
Yeah.
both plants are not at maximum capacity right now.
But as we receive growth in the community, we're going to get more and more money into that ARIFA fund, right?
Yes, because more meters that we establish in the community, yes, that's
Right.
correct.
So we're going to have
And-
more
and the-
income on the water
And the plant will wear out faster.
Huh?
More costs. Jesus.
Those plants are pretty old, and they need, look, we spend a lot
We
of...
just
we're
spent a
spend-
lot of
I
money
know
on
we
it,
did.
Dave.
I know we spent a lot of money
We
on
spent,
it.
I don't know how many thousands of dollars, Dave, on putting in new scrapers and everything else on those plants just 2 years ago.
Well, when you look at this year's budget, it's the same thing. There's a lot of money in that maintenance account, utility maintenance account, over
So those guys didn't have to
$300,000.
get in those tanks and scrape them out. We put in special equipment for them.
All I know is, right now, we're the cheapest guy in the block.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, so what?
Well, we will still be the cheapest guy in the block.
Probably because we didn't do our due diligence and get these rates up to where they should be. And we've lowered the rates, actually. And we shouldn't have. We made a bad mistake, I think.
Can I just make a point about the rate comparison?
Yeah.
We don't allow any.
Put the
Use your
mic
mic.
up.
Okay, sorry, is it working? We don't allow anyone to,
Push the button on the bottom.
Yeah, but the
Jenny Cox.
recorder won't pick it up.
We don't allow anyone to actually turn off the service. We charge that rate 12 months of the year for every meter that's in the ground. But as far as I understand, at the city of Sebring and at other entities, you can actually turn the water off. So people that are gone for 6 months or whatever it is, they're not paying for the full year. So if their rates are less than, if their rates are more than ours, that's a factor that needs to be considered in the calculation of that, if you follow me.
What she's saying is that there's the district we have a base rate that is paid by the residents in the district, whether or not they use water.
12 months of the year, no matter
Yeah.
what. If a tenant moves out and the house is sitting vacant, the landlord is responsible for that. Whereas at the city, if a tenant moves out and turns the water off, no one pays until the water gets turned
Well,
back on.
to your point then, if we didn't have that minimum charge, our rates would even be lower.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That we'd have less dollars coming in.
Right.
So-
But the point I'm trying to make is that even though our rates are lower, they're charged 12 months of the year no matter what. Whereas at the city of Sebring, for, people, snowbirds and things like
Yeah.
that, they're not collecting those higher rates, but for only, 6 months of the year or something like that. I just wanted to make that point.
That's fine.
comparison.
Do you have any idea what that would be in terms of absolute revenues?
I have no way to estimate that, no.
I just know our population in the summertime is probably half. So that would tell you half it is from what the wintertime. So yeah, we would definitely have, our revenues would be much less than they are right now.
Don't forget, the city of Sebring charges you to shut that meter off, and they charge you to hook it back up. So that
Yeah,
almost
but-
offsets it. I had a trailer house that it
We
was
charge
cheaper to leave it on.
We charge connection and disconnection fees as well, but even though we go out and turn off your meter, you're still paying the rate until you ask us to come turn it back on, and you pay the rate year-round.
Any way you can find out what the percentage of their overall demographics turn it on and off? I would think it'd be higher here because I think we got more snowbirds here than
That's a
what
good,
the city of
that's a good
Sebring got.
possibility.
I would guess.
Sebring has a pretty high snowbird rate, too.
Yeah, they do.
That's what I asked her. Maybe you can find out. Ask them what the percentage of turnoffs
Huh?
are.
I can see if they have.
Good
those
luck on that one.
numbers. Yeah, I don't know.
Look, our annual maintenance costs are substantial, and they're telling us something. They're telling us something, and we have to spend several $100,000 just to maintain this. And we're going to have to build up some kind of decent reserve to address an issue.
Right, and I'm not arguing with that point at all. I just wanted to put the rate comparison into perspective.
And I remember when we discussed the situation with that plan on 23, Unit 23, which I believe is still operating at about 25% of capacity. There were some real geographical flow, gravity restrictions when we talked about utilizing that in a better manner. You remember those arguments?
Are you talking about the
Yeah.
study that Julian did, or that overall
Yeah, that was part of
main
it.
study?
That was part
That
of
was a good deal.
So what we're proposing now is that, and I know what is that, Unit 5, whatever the big plan is.
Unit
We're
4.
up about 75, 80% or something like that. So we're talking about redirecting some of that flow over to the smaller plant? Is that what we're talking about?
It's been discussed, yes.
Down the road,
I'll
not
bring it over, I think.
Not right now.
right now.
Well, yeah, but there is some kind of regulation. We get to 75%, we have to do certain things, and in fact, we're supposed to be doing a plan. If we get to that capacity, we're supposed to be doing a updating of our overall plan, so we have to keep that in mind. Gators should be able to tell us where we sit on that. So,
Well, just, if you look at operations and just go through the costs here, we have electric pump, $56,000, electric pump, $72,000, equipment rental, $10,000, lift station repairs, $40,000, valve replacements, $40,000, repair and maintenance, water, $50,000, sewer, $100,000. So look at all the money and I had read them all off, but look at all the money we're spending now just to maintain.
that's what I'm saying.
I know, I'm talking to Mr. Halbert here, that we are spending a ton of money just to keep the plants operational, which tells you someday this won't work and we're going to have to do something about it. And not to build funds for the future, to me, is just being irresponsible. It's
Well, you know,
simple as that.
on page 4 of this operations,
Well, that's what I'm reading right there. That's
is that what you're reading from?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's $315,000 that I was going to ask for some better definition of what we're going to use that money for. The only one that's identified is lift station manhole repairs. I don't know how many of those are, and I don't know, it's $40,000, but there's $315,000 in those repair and maintenance, water equipment and sewer equipment line items, and
You're not even counting page 5, are you?
I'm not even over to page 5.
Yeah,
I'm talking
well-
about page 4.
Well, there's a ton on page 5, too.
Oh, I know it. So I got the same questions, and what, I don't know where it's all going to come from unless we boost our rates up to accommodate some of that stuff. We're burning a lot of money, and I would like some clearer definition from somebody as to what those different repair and maintenance line items are for, other than maybe they just said, well, this is what we paid last year, and maybe this is what we're going to pay this year, and not have any real idea what we're really going to need.
Let me make a comment to that. We currently have in the budget this year, $40,000 for manhole repairs and $40,000 for the valve replacements. It doesn't look like that we're going to spend any of that. The reason being is that, first of all, the valve replacements, now that we have our GPR locator, that locator is going to be able to tell us, where the current valves are, because, we've had many issues with that in the past. We don't, we have these old maps and can't even tell where they are. But the idea is to put more valves into the district just in case there is a water line break. So now that we have that GPR locator, we can move forward with that project, but it's taken longer than we anticipated. So we'd like to roll that $40,000 into this budget cycle for 2015, 2016. The manholes, I haven't seen a map, but I do know that we have extensive manhole repairs that need to be done. And again, I'm going to have to get that information from Gator about what streets and what manholes we're looking at.
Well, apart from anything else, go to page 5, and you've got on top of everything that Kurt and Dave talked about, you've got just a general line item, sewer improvements. There's $60,000 in that, so we're leaking pretty badly on an annual basis.
Water line extensions, $180,000.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask about. These two things, the emergency generator for $125,000 and the water line extension. Refresh me on that water line extension.
Okay, the water line extension is listed on the sheet of paper that Jenny brought to you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Closing the loop.
Oh, that's right.
This is the Ponce de Leon Eastern Basin drainage repairs and upgrade.
Yeah, okay.
Gator is finalizing the bid specifications for this project right now. And the water line extension, we're budgeting that $180,000. We are going to use our impact fees to construct that water line. And we'd like to loop that. Right now, the water line dead ends, and they'd like to be able to loop it so it's a continuous
Well, it was explained to me that if you don't loop it, you lose pressure. In fact, when
You do.
Avon Park needed water, didn't have enough pressure to even really help them out at one time. So by looping it, it creates sufficient pressure through that whole line.
There's not a closer place to get the redundancy. I mean, you got to go that far, $180,000 far to get to connect. I know when they rented down at Cortez, they could have gone a block over to Mexican to whatever that road is and hooked it up, and they run it down about a mile.
This
So
is
there's
an
nothing
estimate.
closer to do.
This is an estimate. Let's see what the bid, once we get the bid specifications and advertise, let's see what the bids come back at for that.
Okay. Well, it seems to be a consensus that we want to take Dave Halbig's suggestion and go 250 this year and maybe 250 next year. So when you come back on July 10th, you have the revenues reflect that, if you will.
Okay. Now, anytime we change the rates, it does need to go through public hearing.
Well,
And
eventually it
that's-
will go through public hearing.
Okay.
but
I just wanted to
think
answer
just-
that to Mr. Miller's comment.
Well, it's not a rate, it's a surcharge, right?
Well, we're
That's
changing.
710? Yeah, it's
But in order to increase monies that
Anything
go
we
into
have
the
to go
year,
through
we
that
have to
route.
increase the rates for the water services.
We're still on a program for
The-
residential or equivalent residential rates on commercial guys. We're still
We
working
are,
down that.
we still are, but that's the board, had implemented that over a 6-year period, and we've already, reached that 6 years. So we're finished with that. Yes.
as long as,
One-
excuse me, go ahead.
One other thing I want to bring up, we're still looking at a bill date of the 13th and a penalty date of the 14th. Have we ever decided about changing that?
Yes, we did. Even though you see that on the bill, that is, we have given a leeway on that, at least 2 days is what I've mentioned, 2 to 3 days. 5 days is too extensive for the process that we have because we only bill once a month, but we are giving that leeway. Even though it says a different date on the bill, it doesn't mean that she's going to run the penalties that day. We've made an internal policy to wait a couple days.
On the 17th.
Well,
Did I?
the reason I bring that up is if your bill date ends up on, let's say, the 3rd, and the 4th of July happens to be on Monday, you're going to run into, and you mail it in, or you're up north and you get the bill, by the time the mail gets here, it's going to be late.
Yeah, but
So
yeah,
I'm
but you
just saying,
get the bill. You get two or three. What is it? 2 or 3 weeks before it's due, right?
You do. You
So
well, I understand that, Kurt, but a lot of people they wait until the middle of the month, or they don't get paid until they have to send it in, and then by the time they send it in, it's late. Okay?
okay, yeah, okay.
I'm just saying that 1 day period or whatever it is not long enough for a penalty.
Well, then tell you what you're saying. We'd have to shorten up the due date. We'd have to make that
We
period
would.
shorter so we could give you a longer grace period.
Yeah, let me talk to Paige and see if we can accurately reflect the penalty date, because even though the penalty date, might say the 14th, technically we're not running the penalties on the 14th. I've asked her to give a few more days.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we currently charge, 2.5 to pay it online?
Correct. 2.5%.
Is that about what it cost us?
Well, the third-party provider actually charges that. We don't see that money. It goes directly
Right,
to them.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just to be clear, on the URIF fund, we have no restrictions as long as it's applied to a utility situation. Is that correct?
It actually can be used for any purpose.
But I mean, the intent was.
The intent, yeah, the original intent was originally for utilities, but the board approved a resolution later that allowed those monies to be used for whatever purpose they choose.
Yeah, so that would include equipment or anything then?
Yes.
Would that then, could we apply that completely to that renovation at the maintenance area, since part of it's golf operation and part of
Yes.
it's utility?
Yes.
You can?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know.
We done with revenue? Go to page 2, customer service.
No changes in this department.
Okay. No comment from the board?
Oh, yeah, I got
Okay.
a comment on customer service. You have an additional customer service person. We got the new meter system. We got all the bells and whistles. Doesn't this thing save time and accuracy, and doesn't that generate the bill?
No,
As well?
it doesn't. No, we have a separate software that generates the actual billing, but they interface. Both softwares talk to
they
each other.
interface.
Yes, sir.
And we don't have any more customers than we had before. I know one's an upgrade. You're going to upgrade somebody to a supervisor, but
Still
Do
two
you-
positions. Still
Yeah.
the same number of positions. Yes, sir.
you do need this other customer service person, new hire.
It's just two people. What I did is I just upgraded the position. When one of our customer service personnel, when she moved, I hired someone else in her place, but it's a supervisory position to handle the new meter and the new meter software.
So
So
it's
it's
not-
still two positions.
Okay.
Not an addition. It's not an addition, yeah.
I understand.
Jenny, just, it would be helpful if you could, in the near future, break down our benefit package markup for our employees' salaries, fringe benefits, and so forth, what we're actually, because we keep talking about, well, we're paying so-and-so this or that, and the other thing, but we're paying, 2.5 times more when it gets right down to everything. So it's been a while since I've seen that, in terms of insurance, benefits, I guess, all the other good stuff.
All right, let's move on to conservation and resource management.
Okay. I got a question. We decided 2 or 3 years ago to do all this clearing and work on the Turtle Run. I'm assuming that a lot of this cost is Turtle Run maintenance work. Am I correct in assuming that?
Well, the individuals under this department, they spray, yes, the wetlands throughout the district, but it is off in the ponds on the golf courses as well.
Do we really know what it costs to keep Turtle Run maintained? I mean, we're out there constantly spraying. We got other labor out there. We got all this. I think somebody told me one time we got 55 acres of conservation area out there. Now I know all of it's not under maintenance, but I would like to know how much it's going to cost and how much our costs are going to be going forward, because we might at some point say, wait a minute, maybe we can't afford to do that. We got to maybe dial it back or do this or do that. I think we probably got some decisions to make, rather than just throwing labor at it and going out there and working on it every day and spraying herbicides. And I don't know what the rest of you guys think about it, but it seems to be an ongoing thing, and I don't know if we got control. I don't know if we're going to get control of it. So is it never going to end?
Well, they also do mosquito spraying. They handle the spraying in the wetlands. They also do they're working on the pine tree injections, right-of-ways, and their stormwater areas. So it encompasses some other areas besides the golf courses.
Why do we put wash water recycling facility under this category? under conservation and resource?
That $100,000 was included in this current year's budget. I moved it out, so if you look at the last column, it's zero, because this facility is incorporated with the new maintenance facility
Okay.
as part of buildings and grounds.
Yeah, and refresh my memory on the Miranda situation, drainage situation. We've got 108,000 in there, it's carryover.
Yes, that's listed on the sheet of paper that Jenny Cox gave you as part of the Ponce de Leon Eastern Basin drainage repair. Gator is currently working on the bid specifications for that.
That's
Should
part
be
of
put
that-
out to bid for,
That's part of that whole North
Yes.
End stuff.
yes.
I wonder why we call it Miranda then. Because I remember we had some painful drainage issues in Miranda for a couple of years, and I don't want to go back there again.
The skid steer, is that a replacement, or is it a additional piece of equipment, or?
We do have a current skid steer, and I do not have the number of hours on that, but it is a machine that we use for, actually all departments use that machine, and the one we have has a lot of hours. I don't have the number of hours. I'd like to get that first. But this is it would be a new skid steer, and then eventually, and within a couple years, we want to have two to be able to use, is the way it was described to me. But I don't have any information about the old skid steer.
And it's used basically for right-of-way clearing and
It's underbrush.
golf course
I mean,
conservation area clearing?
it's
or-
used a lot, yes.
I think it's the one with the tracks on it.
Yeah.
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 It's a lot of
Yeah.
money, I just wondered.
It is.
Does that take into account of any salvage value out of the one we got? Because I'm sure that would have considerable salvage value to somebody.
Well, based on what she said, they would
We
keep
were-
that one for
we
a
were
couple of
gonna-
years.
We weren't going to trade it in immediately.
Okay, I didn't catch that, I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right, on to operations, I guess.
Yeah.
Page 4.
Well, we talked about page 4. I've got a question on page 5, if we can go there.
Okay.
Emergency generator, Unit 23, that's operating at, 25% capacity. Is that something we have over at the other plant? We need this one here? I mean, what's our justification for that expense? It's a big ticket item.
It is. Actually, it's in the current year budget, and we should be purchasing that under either a state or federal contract. I know Gator is looking into that for me right now, but that was part of the Unit 23 expansion. I know those blowers were budgeted in the current year, so that's why you see.
No, it's not the
current-
blowers. It's at the bottom of the page 5. It's line item 402-538-6401, emergency generated dash Unit 23.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
$125,000 for this upcoming year. Do we have any rationale for that? Any documentation?
I don't have any documentation. If Gator, I know Gator's had a previous appointment today, so he couldn't be
Yeah.
here. But I do know it's a necessary piece of equipment. I don't know what's wrong with the emergency generator that we have there. Apparently, it doesn't work, and that it's not a position that we want to put ourselves in. So,
Well, can we
Yes.
get
I mean, I
some-
know I'm giving the simplistic answer, and if Gator was here, he could give it a more technical, but
Can we get something on that
yes,
time for the next meeting?
yes.
My only question was on page 5, the sludge hauling went from 50,000 down to 25. Why would there be a decrease?
Actually, Jenny and I have already discussed that. We're going to look into that. I don't know if it's
That just doesn't make any
typo.
sense to me.
We've already discussed it, so we're going to look at those numbers.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Now, Larry, with all the crap around here, we need an improvement.
We've been spreading it out everywhere, not just in one spot.
I got a similar question on the boom truck, Tanya. The last item,
Okay, we're going to look into it, sir.
the last item on page 5, this boom truck, what's the purpose of that? $80,000 boom truck.
I spoke to Actually, I'd like to amend this part of the budget. I want to describe to you what my conversation was this morning. We currently do have a boom truck, and it is a older piece of equipment. It's not used very much. And in speaking with the utilities supervisor today, he mentioned to me that they are in more of a need of a truck, a utility truck currently. Now, we do have a utility truck in our capital plan for next year. And he was asking, instead of this boom truck, can we put in our budget for an actual utility work truck? So I said I can do that request and see, but we currently do have a boom truck, and it's not used very much.
Who is our supervisor?
John Martinez.
Okay. By the way, at the end of the document here, we need to update our organization chart, unless you want to be forever in finance.
We can do that.
All right.
So I'd like to bring more information about that utility truck at the next meeting.
Well, let's quickly go through the 5-year plan and see if there's any changes there.
Mr. President, I would, once again, for the record, state this is not a 5-year plan, it's a 5-year listing.
Okay, thank you.
Wish list. I have tried and tried and tried for, ever since I've been on the board, to get a properly documented capital improvement plan and program, but I keep coming up dry on that. Tanya, I would hope that we could make some improvement in that area. My pleas to Mike Wright have gone unanswered in past years, so.
I will sure try, yes. We have some work to do in this area.
It's an important document.
It
just,
is.
if nothing else, from what Kurt said earlier in the discussion. And that's planning for the future, but, you know, this should be a detailed work program for what we're facing in the short term. And it should be rolled over every year. I mean, it's Public Administration 101. And what we have is somebody's putting down numbers, and I don't mean they're not thought out, but they're not really documented in the overall scheme of things, and then related back to these different line items, because you've got equipment here, you got equipment there, you got this and that, and then you got capital wish list. And if we're really in the modern age, we need to have a very detailed, specific game plan for the next 5 years. It's not just depreciation, but that's an important part, but all these other things.
I agree. First, starting with the golf fund. You want me to go over a few points with the capital plan? I just want to describe it to you the way we've laid it out.
Okay.
The column FY 2016, that is the column with the amounts that we are requesting.
You know, one thing right there I would like you to say is,
Fiscal year.
I know it says fiscal year
Fiscal year.
2016, but if you could say 2015-2016, 2016-2017, then
We can make
everybody
that
knows
change.
exactly what you're talking about. So.
Okay.
So when you change from maintenance plan to maintenance list, I would like you to change that as well. Never mind.
Okay. These are the numbers that is summarized for you that we've been talking about at the last 2 budget workshops. So when you see FY 2016, we'll change that to 2015, 2016.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a summary. So for golf, we have a total golf and restaurant capital improvements and equipment of $397,000. All of these items are budgeted in the general fund. Okay. The next page, we have our general fund 5-year equipment and maintenance plan. It is laid out in the same format, but here we have the different departments. And we've already discussed these items in length at the last budget workshop.
Okay, we are going to downgrade that line item for the kiosk and the bathrooms over the tennis courts, over my objection.
Correct.
Nevertheless, I want to be very careful about where we cite those bathrooms. like, not on the north end, in the parking lot, so that's just an invitation.
We have a map. I'd like to give it to you at the next
Okay, that'd
budget
be good.
meeting.
The same thing applies to this dog park. I think I asked the questions last meeting, and I got over by Edgewater, which is very scary, and it was some other very visible public place. I think we need to be very careful about citing that if we approve it.
Correct. I mean, I do need some more time to analyze that as far as where to put it. It is an issue, and that is the only area so far that I've come up with, but I've had no further discussions or time to look into that right now. So, I mean, if it's a consensus of the board, I mean, we can leave that in there if that's something you want me to continue to pursue for the 2015-2016 year.
I thought
But
we
if-
took it out. Didn't we decide
What's
we
that, the
didn't?
dog-
The dog park?
I think we took it out.
I think we took it out at the last
Well, that
meeting.
answers that.
I think it come out.
Take it out.
Check your notes, but I think we took it out.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, and you brought up these restroom things. I want to go back after we get through this book and re-emphasize or go back on a couple of things on
Okay.
the and one of them is the restrooms. I'd like to talk about those.
Surely you're not suggesting we don't even do the restrooms.
No, I've got a great alternative to that. I really do. I think.
Not
A
President,
GI pit.
not President McCall's
We'll go
porta
back.
potty.
No, we'll go back. We'll go back to it,
What's
and
wrong with
we'll
mine?
talk about it.
Let's go. All right, go ahead. We're losing it here. Okay, are you done with page 2 there?
Yes.
Okay, then page 3.
Again, this is nothing really I want to go into detail today on as far as the general fund. We can revisit some of these issues at the next meeting when we have a couple things to come back to you on as far as the general fund. And then the last page of the 5-year plan is the utility fund. And again, it gives us a guide, but I agree there needs to be more thought put into this and more description and more detail given in a plan. And that's something we will work on in the next year.
So the utility truck is 30,000. You're going to move that over, take out the 80,000 then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And we slid right by that last page on building and grounds. We're going to revisit, I hope, the paving and what else? I guess that was it. We had any kind of communication from Bell regarding the status of our drawings or our signs?
I communicated with Valerie last week. She is in complete agreement with finishing the rest of our documents per our request and the board's decision at the last meeting. She did say they are a little bit backlogged. She's gotten the design elements in the bin, whatever that means, which I guess is to the people that actually do the construction documents. But she is communicating at least once a week just to let us know that she's still working on it and she will get those to us.
Where are we on the bid process? It's out for bid, right? But
It is out for
What's
bid.
the closing date on it?
June 30th.
Okay. Have we received any yet?
No, but we don't ever receive them until the day of, and then they
Okay.
all come in together.
Another thing before I forget, Tenille, driving by that billboard on 27, nothing jumps out at you color-wise. A lot of good stuff on there and good graphics, but it's so bland that you're just going right by rather than, this Sun Lake, not neon sign, but who does our color design and so forth for that?
I have a graphics person that's been designing. Now all those billboards that have been coming up, we're at a second cycle and this was the last one. So we'll be going through a whole new design process.
Well, Billy Casper designed the one that's up there right now, didn't they? The restaurant one? Isn't that what's up now? The restaurant?
The restaurant one's up there. I
I
I
think.
would have to go
I
back.
think-
Maybe
it
they,
is,
maybe
and-
they
and-
did design that
Yeah.
one.
And you slide right by it. I mean, what we need are some vibrant colors to get their attention.
Okay.
Um,
Noted, and I will definitely, in the next design process, we'll have those same categories and we'll be on the same schedule. We'll come up with some select designs.
It wouldn't be a bad idea if you and this guy, whoever it is, would just drive, say, from Avon Parks down 27 and see what hits you and what doesn't hit you,
Okay.
color-wise. It's not the message. It's, oh, there's Sun and Lake, the color.
Okay. I will.
And to that fact, I would like to have security. Do you go out there on your regular route out on that area? I've noticed, because I drive that van at 6 o'clock in the morning, lots of times that the lights on the billboard are not on, or even when I'm out at Friday night at 10 o'clock, they're not on. And I don't know if it's a cycle thing, but I guess what I was asking security, for them to check the billboard, and if the lights aren't on, to make you aware of it.
I know that I recently have gotten us on a maintenance program, so that electric company that's been handling that for us goes out and checks, because I know that lightning is a huge issue with tripping those lights. So it would definitely be helpful to me, but I know that they're going out and checking them once a month.
Okay, that's fine. As long as somebody's doing it, that's.
And I also know it's on a time schedule, so, which I believe it goes off at midnight and comes on at 6 or 7 a.m. I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
Any other questions? We do have a lot of items to address, to get back to you on. I know next week, July 3rd is a holiday. It's our big firework event, and a short week for all of us for next week. So we have a lot of work to do between now and Friday.
That's what they have weekends for. Oh, no.
I agree. I've had my share.
You've been
lately.
there, I know.
I've had my share
We've both
lately.
been there.
I'd like to go back a little bit in the general fund, just a few items. I would like for you to again, reconsider centralizing our purchasing and what kind of resources it take to do that. I mean, if everybody's in
Actually, Tanya and I talked about that.
agreement with that, I mean, we don't have to do
No,
it, but.
I actually agree 100%, and I've thought about that in addition to some other areas that I feel like we need to be stronger on in finance. And I was going to bring back to the board an additional position that I'd like to budget as we used to have about 3 years ago. But I was going to do that at the next budget workshop.
Okay,
Well,
here we go.
I don't always listen to Rusty Carino, but he made some good points this morning about having the accountability and having the backup and so forth, and we need to have that and strengthen that.
I think with a good purchasing policy, the fact that the financial director is going to review that, you're reviewing it, at least you got more eyes on it than one person. So I'm kind of on the fence on that whole thing too. It's just, what is really best. But if we have a strong purchasing policy, I don't see the need for an extra person, because you got people overseeing what the other people are doing.
Tanya, we have department heads that, we talked earlier in the meeting, we had department heads doing this stuff. But does that come through, Jenny? Did that come through you in terms of?
Came through me.
But, well, I mean, when you were finance director, but I mean, was that before the fact or after the fact?
As far as I know, our department heads have always been involved in the purchasing since I've been there.
So,
I mean, we did have a purchasing, Ms. Martinez, who used to work for the district, her authority, she did a lot of ordering for the district, a lot of supplies and a lot of maintenance type stuff would go through her, but as far as a final involvement, the department heads are definitely involved in that.
well, I guess I'm asking somebody checking the department heads. That's what I'm asking.
Everything goes through me. Anything over $500, I have
Used
to
go through
review.
you.
Yes, well, since I've been involved with the district, I mean, I've been employed, January of 2011, but anything over $500, I review, I look at the invoice, and I approve at that point.
Okay, Jenny, I think in this particular area of your responsibility, I think you have to think like a traffic cop. Okay, it's really important from that standpoint. So, as you can tell, we have some concerns, so.
This, don't, everybody jump down my throat, but,
I might be with you.
okay. When Greg said it was going to cost $65,000 for a restroom, similar to what we have out on the golf course, and we're going to even pare down that one, we're not going to have the kiosk associated with the one over tennis court. I got to thinking about the portable units that we let go. And so I called a couple places. And you can get, and they're these things, according to the guys that build them, of course they're building them, they said these things will outlast any building that you're going to build. And here's one example of them. You can buy very well appointed 2-stall units for between $17,000 and $20,000.
Sold.
And you can place those things. You can get them designed with any color you want. They're all fiberglass. They're weather resistant. You can even set them up so that you can hook up your sewers and everything permanent if you want to. If not, you have to have a. They got a holding tank. It's a pretty big holding tank, and they're air conditioned. They're heated. They got hot water heaters in them. They're unbelievable, and you can set them up and you can landscape around them, and they look pretty nice. You can get them any color. You can design your own. This is only one example of one small unit, and I talked to this.
David, I don't have a problem with that, but the siting of something like that is really critical.
Right.
And we've got some nice tree cover over by those pickleball courts, beyond that little pavilion, that would fit in.
But you can serve the purpose
like
of
that out in the parking lot.
No, you can serve the purpose of this one. I mean, you can pour a pad, and you don't have to get permits or anything to do this. And this is only one company that I happened to print out this one particular, and that's Rural Restrooms. I called another outfit. They didn't call me back, but there's dozens of these companies that make these things, and you could get one for the rec area and the tennis court area for $40,000, which is way under what it would cost to build one unit.
That makes sense.
I mean, I think we need to look into that.
It's an upgrade.
Coincidentally enough, after the board meeting, I did a lot of researching and came up with something quite similar, and have contacted 2 or 3 companies and gotten price quotes back. And of course, you can get something as basic as $17,000 to $25,000, or you can get it souped up.
Yeah.
But I also found, like over here where we need storage, there's a company that has an actual facility that has the 2 restrooms plus storage on the back end.
Right.
And they're all prefabricated. And and I was going to bring at the next board meeting
Okay,
the
good.
Yeah,
information
they're
and
all-
pricing on all
What
that.
are we
Yeah.
budgeting for additional restrooms over here?
65,000.
65?
Yeah, and I'm also getting somebody to give me accurate cost estimates on how much it would be to build a permanent building versus using these prefab restrooms. So we have that actual analysis.
Okay.
As long as
You're welcome
it
to
doesn't
have
look
this.
like an
You're welcome to
inner-city
have
project.
this. I talked to a guy by the name of Tom at this company, and
I'll get it.
and they'll basically do whatever you want, and you can get them pretty upscale on the interior, and they're easy to clean.
They're really nice. Some of the
a lot easier to
the
clean than a
options.
concrete block wall and a concrete floor.
Oh, yeah,
I say.
I agree with that.
So,
There would still be some site prep work, of course,
Yeah.
in putting down concrete slabs and
Well,
and
even
that
if
sort
you
of
add 10 grand to his number, you're still at half the price.
Yes. So.
You get 2 for 1.
Yes.
We have water over at the tennis courts. What's our other utilities network over there? We tap onto something by the clubhouse. Is that the idea?
Craig said there was sewage over there, I think he
Yes.
said.
And we have the same over here already as well because of the bathrooms that we're were once there. So that part of it would not be a huge expense.
I've got a couple more.
Okay.
Nothing's been said. There was nothing in the narrative about the merit increases, and I don't know how you're planning on allocating that. Hopefully, it's we were going to do it by trying to bring the lower paid people up, and do it in that manner, and give raises where they're due and not raises where they're not. So I don't know how you're going to plan on doing that, but you might think about it and come back and.
Okay. I have budgeted for it, and that is a merit plan is a plan that the board had. We've been using that now for quite a number of years. And so I did budget, I'd say at least
Just
4.
went the merit plan the last couple of years, we had a 3% across the board. That's why we raised the objections, because rather than this public sector monolithic raise or adjustment, whatever you want to call it, I mean, I think you need to, again, evaluate people on a case-by-case basis.
That's pretty much the number they got plugged in this year, too.
Well, as an overall...
But this is just a budget number. This isn't...
As an overall number,
Correct.
That's fine.
That's
but I
correct.
think each department head needs to go into that. We've discussed that before.
We have, yes.
And look at the merits of each case.
And
And
I've
as
got-
David says, where we have adjustments to make on the lower end, well, then we do that.
That would be the time to consider. That's correct.
Okay, I just want compensation to reflect performance. Very simple formula.
I got one other thing. We had an incident earlier this year where we had a problem with a assessment classification, and I think I talked to you about it one after that. But I'd like to consider an assessment classification for any property that carries a unity of title and has only one dwelling, and that unit to be assessed as one parcel. I don't know what cost that would be to the district. I don't think it's going to be much, but it's all about benefits received. I think that's my mentality. We had to turn this other gentleman down because that was the rules. But if we change the rules, then that doesn't apply. But it wouldn't apply to the others. If you got a unity of title, you got 2 lots, and you only got one dwelling on there, then they would be under this new assessment classification, where it's assessed as one unit.
Now, there was a resolution that was adopted by the board on changing to where if it's a unity of title property in the district, first of all, we don't even have access to those records. That's another area that we're going to be looking at before we do our billing. But in a unity of title case, that second lot will be billed at an unimproved rate.
I understand that.
And so that's something, and what we can you describe to me again what it was
Well,
that?
I'd like to look at it, and
Okay.
I don't know if you can get a number. I doubt very much if there's very many units.
38.
38 of them?
That was what was discussed before.
There's 38 that carry a unity of title.
I didn't say a unity of title. There's 38 that encompass 2 lots.
Okay, but they would have to.
Yeah, but would that be duplexes? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know where they're at.
Because those lots are wider than 100, yeah, I think.
But in the case I'm talking about, you would have to have a unity of title,
Designation.
recorded in order to apply. And I think the church assessment too, there's always an asterisk. It said churches are
Yes.
assessed that needs to
At a lower
just
rate.
be changed to whatever
Just the
it
rate,
is.
yeah.
So
I guess my concern, what if somebody bought 4 or 5 lots? Then you'd only have one. I mean,
We do have a couple of those.
I'm thinking maybe there should be a limit to this unity
There
of
are,
title.
I know
if-
there's at least
Yeah.
one with 3 lots and
Well, the one on,
also one at least with 4.
on Sunrise over there, that's got to be
There's
about
one
4
on
lots, isn't it?
Magnolia that has 4, I know. I think the one on
Yeah.
Sunrise is
But
only
I'm-
3.
my mentality is benefit received.
I understand.
That's my mentality, and that's why I asked to just take a look at it and see.
Yeah.
what
Okay, but
impact.
going back to unity of title, our our struggle for for this next billing cycle is how do we get the county to provide us that information? Because we don't have access to it currently unless we go individual by property record. It's nothing we have on our database. It's nothing that is given to us.
We would have to
We'd have to
We'd have to
incorporate.
put the burden on the homeowner to prove that they have it.
I mean, because
The county, if I go buy a house and an empty lot beside it on the same deed, the county property appraiser's office has been known to put them together on one strap. Therefore, they're in our system as only one parcel, but there may or may not have ever been a specific unity of title recorded with the county. It just happens that they were on the same deed, so for ease of paperwork and tracking processes, the county put them together. So because houses are together on multiple lots, doesn't necessarily mean to us that there is actually a unity of title filed.
So it'd be impossible for the county to let you know, or
Well, they do have a designation on their website if it is a unity title, but I've found that it is not always correct either. So we're going to have to work out a plan internally of how we're going to approach that resolution and going into the next assessment billing.
Well, you could always bill at the regular rate and then let the homeowner, to your recommendation, come to us and say, look, I got unity of title, so then you would rebill them, but up to that point, you would just bill them like you normally bill them. Okay. Anything else, guys?
Does Michael have anything back there? Before you close it?
You got anything to say, Michael? Okay.
Tanya, we're going to talk about rates too at some point in time. Rates for tennis, pickleball, rates for community center rentals. We're going to have that.
We can
part of
if
the
that's
discussion.
something the board wants to look at.
I thought we already talked about that.
No, I don't think so.
We've set the rates for those.
We did last year.
Last week.
Last week? No.
Last meeting.
Oh, the golf we did.
The golf we
But not-
did.
But not the racket club or the fitness center.
Do you want us to provide you a list of those rates if,
I think we should
at the
discuss
next
it.
meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
Just, okay.
All right. Meeting adjourned.